Detention turned into a secret love affair with my rival. The gym roared around me, chants, sneakers, adrenaline, but all I saw was him. Ellie Rivera, standing at the far end of the court, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching me like he always did, with that unreadable, maddening stare. 3 seconds left. I faked left, spun right, took the shot. Swish. Game. Everyone exploded. Teammates slapped my back, cheerleaders screamed, but I barely heard any of it. Ellie hadn't moved. He just stood there, staring at the hoop like the loss meant nothing. That somehow pissed me off more than anything else. "Party at Mason's!" Jake yelled. "You coming?" I nodded, eyes still locked on Ellie. Because it wasn't just basketball. It never had been. Grades, clubs, teachers, every damn arena. He was always there. My shadow. Always one breath behind. Always chasing. And once in a while, beating me. But never bragging. Never talking. Just cold, quiet war. I found him later by the vending machine, drenched in sweat, chugging water like it might kill him. "You played hard," I said, surprising even myself. He didn't look at me. "Didn't play hard enough." "You were always close. Maybe next time." His eyes finally met mine, stormy, sharp. "You always say that you're not gloating." "I'm not." "Sure." The tension snapped between us, crackling. "Why do you always make me the villain?" I asked. "Because you get everything handed to you. I work twice as hard just to be invisible." That landed hard. I stepped closer. "Then beat me." He blinked. "You think that's what this is about? What else would it be?" He gave a low laugh, more disbelief than amusement. "You really don't get it, do you?" And just like that, he was gone, leaving me breathless and wondering, what else could it be? The news broke like glass. I was in the kitchen, halfway through a protein bar, when Dad walked in with the biggest smirk I'd seen all week. "Well, Karma finally paid a visit," he said, flipping open the morning paper and slapping it on the table. "The Riveras are finished." Dad and Mr. Rivera had been competing for the same market for years. 2 rival stores, 1 street apart, both pretending the other didn't exist. I paused mid-bite. "What?" He pointed to the front page. Local business owners arrested for fraudulent practices. And there it was. Ellie's parents, handcuffed, faces blurred but still unmistakable. Beneath the headline, in bold, "Authorities seek eldest son for further investigation." Our stores had battled for customers, sales, and space at the town center. Now, with theirs out of the way, ours had no competition. I stood frozen. The room suddenly felt colder. "They've been skimming profits, faking ledgers, God knows what else," Dad continued, as if we were talking stocks. "Their house is being seized. Poetic, isn't it?" I stared at the house across the street, once pristine and proud. Now, yellow police tape flapped against the gate like warning signs in a hurricane. Mum walked in, clutching her phone. "The board is talking about reallocating their retail slots. This could double our revenue, Logan. Isn't that great?" Great? Great? I nodded faintly, but my insides were tangled in knots, because somewhere out there, Ellie was watching his entire life fall apart, and worse, the police were after him too. "You think Ellie's involved?" I asked. Dad snorted. "Of course he is. The boy's as cold as his parents. Wouldn't be surprised if he forged half those documents himself." I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window. His house, no, or what used to be his house, was silent. The house was dead quiet when I got back. Everyone was asleep. Perfect. I'd only spent an hour at Mason's. I couldn't get my head in the party zone. Not when all I could think about was what I'd seen in the news, what I'd heard at home, what I felt in my chest every time I looked across the street. I shut the door to my room softly, ready to drop into bed and pretend for just a few hours that nothing had changed. But when I turned on the light, I froze. Someone was in my bed. Not just someone. Ellie. My breath caught. He was curled under the blanket like he belonged there. Shoes kicked off, hoodie still on, cheek pressed into my pillow like this was a place he'd found peace in. My bed, my space, invaded by him. What the hell? Ellie? I said, louder than I meant to. What are you doing here? He stirred, groaning faintly. His eyelids fluttered before snapping open. We locked eyes. Logan? He said groggily, blinking fast like he wasn't sure if I was real. Yeah, Logan, I snapped. You're in my bed, in my room, at my house. Are you insane? He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was waiting for you. Oh, that makes it normal, I said, voice rising. Did it even cross your mind that this is breaking and entering? I didn't break anything, he muttered. I climbed. I gawked. Seriously? Is this funny to you? No, Logan, it's not. He bit back. You think I wanted to be here? You think this is how I pictured my Friday night? Sneaking into your house like some criminal? You are wanted by the police, I hissed, pacing now, heart racing. Do you realize what could happen if they think I'm hiding you? He stood too, the fire back in his eyes. I didn't have a choice. They're after me for something I didn't do. My parents are gone. My house is sealed. I can't go to my brother's dorm because they'll track me there next. My brother doesn't even know what happened. I had nowhere else, Logan. Before I could respond, a loud knock rattled the door. Logan? My mum's voice stern. What's going on in there? My eyes widened. Crap, I whispered. Get in the closet. What? Too late, I muttered as the door burst open. My parents stormed in. My mum's eyes landed on Ellie instantly. My dad's jaw tightened, like he'd just found a snake on the floor. What is he doing here? My mum demanded, voice sharp enough to cut steel. I can explain, I started, but Dad stepped forward. He broke in? He asked coldly. Did he steal anything? No, I didn't, Ellie began, but my dad cut him off. I knew he was trouble, he growled. Just like his parents. Should have known he'd run here to drag you down with him. That's not fair, I snapped. You don't know anything. We know enough, Mum said. Logan, you are not harboring a fugitive in this house. He's not... Logan, my dad barked. We're telling you now. He leaves tonight. Then turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind them like punctuation on a death sentence. The silence that followed was suffocating. I turned slowly to face Ellie. He was still standing, but barely. His face had gone pale, lips parted like he'd been holding in a scream. And then he cracked. His shoulders shook, and he staggered back, hitting the edge of my dresser before sliding down to the floor. His hands covered his face. I didn't do anything, he whispered, voice breaking. I didn't even know they were lying. I thought we were just rebuilding. My dad said he was fixing the books, that it would help us compete with your stores, that it was just temporary. Tears slipped between his fingers. His voice shook. They took everything. My mum, my dad. I didn't even get to say goodbye to my brother. He's still in his dorm. I'm all he has left, and I'm hiding in your room like a damn fugitive. I crouched down slowly. I'd never seen him like this, not even close. The Ellie I knew was all control and silence, sharp edges and distance, not this raw, trembling version. I didn't know where else to go, he said again, barely more than a breath. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I came here. I didn't know what to do. Something in my chest shifted, not out of guilt or pity, out of something deeper. I sighed, dragging a hand through my hair. Okay. He looked up. What? You can stay, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Just for tonight. I'll figure something out. His eyes widened. Why? Because you're not the guy they think you are. Because I can't stand watching you fall apart. Because you're you. And I don't even know what that means anymore. I didn't say any of that. I just muttered. Because it's the right thing to do. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I was real, and then, softly, thank you. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I helped him to his feet, and as he sat on the bed again, I pulled out a blanket from the closet, handed it to him. If anyone asks, I said, you were never here. For the first time since he walked into my life, Ellie gave me something that wasn't cold or competitive. He gave me a look that almost resembled trust. And for the first time in years, I didn't hate it. Sleep didn't come easy that first night. Even with Ellie just breathing softly across the room, the quiet throb in my chest wouldn't shut up. I kept turning, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers to all the questions I didn't even know how to ask. Why did I let him stay? Why did I care this much? Why did seeing him fall apart shake me harder than any win or loss I ever had? By the time morning light bled through my curtains, I had my answer. I didn't care that he used to be my rival. I didn't care what people thought. I wasn't going to throw him to the wolves. Not now. Not ever. Before my parents got up, I nudged Ellie awake. He blinked groggily, his face still smudged from sleep and dried tears. You're staying, I said simply. He sat up, confused. What? Here, with me. Until this mess clears, you need a place to lie low, and I'm not letting them take you for something you didn't do. For a second, he looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped, and he just nodded. Okay. Somehow, for the first few days, my parents didn't notice. Between early meetings and late nights, they barely looked into my room. If they had, they might have seen 2 mugs on the desk, 2 backpacks, 2 shadows passing by the bathroom door. But they didn't. Not at first. Days turned into nights. Nights bled into more mornings, and slowly, without either of us really noticing, everything started to shift. At first, we barely spoke. We slept on my bed at the opposite corners, distancing ourselves as far as we could. We ate in silence, listened for footsteps, tried not to make noise. But something about being trapped in the same space every day made the walls crumble. One night, we started arguing about who was better at basketball. The next, we ended up playing chess on my phone until 2 a.m. He beat me twice. The day after, I caught him humming while folding my laundry. You sing too? I teased. He'd rolled his eyes, smirking faintly. Multi-talented menace, remember? We shared a laugh, a real one. And then, one afternoon, it was raining, cold. Steady drizzle that made the whole world feel grey. When I came back from school, I found Ellie wrapped in one of my old hoodies, sleeves too long, collar a little stretched, and I didn't know why it hit me then, but he looked like he belonged here. He caught me staring. What? He asked, brows raised. I shrugged. Nothing. Just weird seeing you in my clothes. He grinned, slow and lopsided. Get used to it. Yours are more comfortable. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't say anything when he kept it on all day. I kind of liked it. It was strange, realizing that the boy I'd spent years treating like my enemy wasn't anything like I thought. He was sharp, sarcastic, soft in quiet moments. He had a weird obsession with pineapple on pizza and secretly loved trashy horror movies. He made my room feel less cold. And me? I found myself lingering in those moments more than I should have, watching him laugh, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smirked, how his presence made the room feel full. One night, we were passing each other in the hallway when I reached out to grab something from the counter. My hand brushed his, light, accidental, but neither of us pulled away right away. He looked up at me, gaze sharp but unreadable. Careful, he said softly. You keep looking at me like that, I might start thinking we're not rivals anymore. I swallowed. We're not. It hung between us for a second, bare, unspoken. He didn't reply, just kept walking, but his shoulder brushed mine on the way past, and lingered just long enough to make it mean something. I didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't rivalry anymore. The night it happened, we'd fallen asleep after watching some dumb sci-fi movie. We were both tired, it was late, and this time neither of us knew if we were sleeping at the corners. I woke up warm, really warm, and not alone. Ellie's arm was draped around my waist, face pressed into the curve of my shoulder. One of my hands was resting on his back. We were tangled, pressed close like puzzle pieces that didn't want to separate. I didn't move. I didn't want to. Something about the moment felt peaceful, safe, right. I should have been panicking, freaking out, but all I could feel was this weird, heavy calm in my chest, like everything had fallen into place without either of us realizing it. That is, until the door creaked open. "Logan, My mother's voice cut like ice through the quiet. I shot up. Ellie jolted awake beside me, eyes wide. We both turned to the door. There she was, standing in the doorway, frozen. Her eyes flicked from me to Ellie and back, confusion turning into slow, cold rage. "What is he doing in your bed?" she asked, voice dangerously calm. My mouth opened. No words came out. "You told us he was gone," she continued. "That first night you promised, and now I find out he's been living here, hiding under our roof." "Mum, please." "Do you have any idea what you've done? He's a suspect. He could drag all of us down with him." Ellie stood up slowly, head low, shame written across every inch of him. "I'll go," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to stay this long. No," I said firmly, stepping in front of him. "He's not going anywhere." My mum's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" "You don't understand," I said. "He didn't do anything wrong. He's just a kid who lost everything overnight. He was scared, and he came to me. Me, Mum. Not to hurt anyone, just to feel safe." "Logan, I'm not asking you to like it, but I'm asking you to trust me. I know him. I know he's not like his parents." My mum looked torn, angry, confused. She turned and left without another word. Ellie sat back on the bed, silent. "I'm sorry," he said. I looked at him, something aching behind my ribs. "Don't be. You didn't deserve this." An hour passed before my parents called me downstairs. We sat at the dining table like it was a courtroom. My dad was stone-faced. My mum just stared, arms crossed. Finally, she said, "I still don't think it's a good idea to keep him at our house. We are skeptical, but he can stay for now. This still doesn't mean that we are completely okay, and it's only for the temporary time being. He is going to help around the house, and we keep this quiet. Understand?" I nodded. "Thank you." That evening, Ellie helped Dad fix the garage light. He offered to cook, and though it turned out to be a disaster, who knew pasta could catch fire? My mum didn't complain. She even smiled once, and I realized, as I watched him laugh at himself in our kitchen, his guard finally down, that somewhere between rivalry and survival, something else had begun, and I wasn't ready to let it go. It had been 3 weeks since Ellie became part of our house, and part of my life in a way I never saw coming. My parents still hadn't completely warmed up to him. Dad remained tight-lipped. Mum oscillated between civil and cold, but they didn't ask him to leave, and in this house, that was as good as a peace treaty. Ellie never pushed his luck. He helped with chores, fixed things none of us even knew were broken, and cooked simple dinners with more heart than skill. He never complained, never demanded. He just existed, quietly, like someone afraid he might be asked to leave at any moment. And sometimes, when the world went still, I caught him staring out my bedroom window with this faraway look in his eyes. He never said it out loud, but I knew who he was thinking about. His brother. That night, I found him pacing my room, shoulders stiff, phone in his hand like it was a ticking bomb. "Everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated, then turned to me, eyes heavier than usual. "I called the dorm. They're planning to expel him. My brother." "What? Why? And did they figure out that you were on the police's radar?" "Unpaid school fees. And I had some contacts, so it's okay for now," he muttered. "But apparently, the fraud froze all accounts tied to our parents. He's been there on borrowed time." My stomach twisted. "Ellie." "I need to do something," he said, more to himself than me. "I need to get him out of there, just for a night, just so he knows I'm still here, that I didn't abandon him." "Then let's bring him here." Ellie blinked. "What?" "We'll do dinner. Safe, quiet, one evening. We'll figure it out after." He stared at me like I just handed him a life raft. "Are you sure?" "Yeah," I nodded. "He's your brother. He deserves one good night." We packed him up the next evening, kept our heads low, our movements careful without getting caught by the police. The moment Ellie's brother saw him, he burst into tears. They hugged like they hadn't seen each other in years, not weeks. Dinner that night was chaotic in the best way. Spaghetti, laughter, burnt garlic bread, and awkward silences with my parents that Ellie expertly danced around. It was the first time I saw my mum smile at him without hesitation. After dessert, while his brother played with my father, Ellie pulled me aside. He whispered, "I can't risk him being expelled. I have to find a way to cover the fees." I knew where this was going. "What are you thinking?" He looked at me, jaw clenched. "I'm gonna drop out, get a job, just until I can support him." My chest tightened. "Ellie, no, you've come too far." "I don't have a choice," he said, voice low. "I'm all he has now." My parents offered to help. Mum even pulled out her checkbook, but Ellie stepped back like it was a snake. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I can't take your money." Pride, stubborn, admirable, infuriating pride. He sent his brother back to his dorm. He had told that he didn't want his brother to suffer in any way, and keeping his brother with him meant increasing the risk of him getting caught. I told Ellie that we could take care of his brother, but he insisted it would be better if he was back in dorm. This way, neither his brother nor us could be affected even if someday he was to be caught, which I didn't want. But the next morning, he was gone before I woke up. He didn't come home last night. Panic clawed at me with every passing hour. I tried his phone, no answer. I drove around, checking every cafe, every store I could think of. Around midnight, we got the call. Police station. Without even looking at the time, I went to the station and found him sitting on a bench inside the precinct, looking exhausted but unharmed. His hoodie was dirty, his eyes dull, but the moment he saw me, something flickered back to life in them. "What happened?" I rushed to him. "I was filling job applications. Someone recognized me. Cops showed up, took me in for questioning." I swallowed hard. "Did they cleared me," he said softly. "Said I had no direct involvement in the fraud, but they couldn't ignore the fact that I helped my parents with the business, even if I didn't know." "That's ridiculous." "They said they'd cut me a deal," he interrupted. "No charges, no court, but I have to do 6 months of community service." I paused. "And?" He smiled, wry, tired. "They're offering me a part-time job at the station. Filing, errands, basic stuff. Said they found out about my brother, that I'm trying." Relief hit me like a wave. "So, you're free?" Sort of," he laughed, shaking his head. "It's not exactly a fairy tale, Logan, but yeah, I'm not going to jail." I sat beside him, our shoulders brushing. "You scared the hell out of me," I murmured. "Yeah, well, I also saw my parents. It had been weeks since I saw them. They told me that the verdict on their case was still pending, but meeting them after a long time felt different and comforting at the same time," he said softly. I just nodded, and for a moment we sat in silence. Then he added, "Thank you for showing up, for everything." "I always show up," I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me, and something hung in the air between us, unspoken, unfinished. Maybe it wasn't love yet, but it was something. Back home, my parents were waiting. They didn't yell, they didn't scold. They just listened as Ellie explained everything. His choice to work, his community service, his plans to keep his brother safe. For the first time, I saw something shift in them. Not just tolerance, but something like respect. "All right," my mum said finally. "You can stay as long as you need." Ellie blinked. "Thank you." "You've earned it," my dad added quietly. "Just keep being honest." Ellie nodded, emotion caught in his throat. Later, as we lay side by side in the dark, he whispered, "I never thought I'd feel safe again." "You are," I whispered back. "As long as you're here, you are." He didn't say anything after that, but he reached for my hand, and I let him hold it. The first time I saw Ellie in that oversized neon orange vest, holding a trash picker in one hand and a trash bag in the other, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. He looked miserable. Not because he was picking up litter from the side of the community park. We both knew he'd do worse if it meant protecting his brother. But because the vest was 3 sizes too big, the cap kept falling over his eyes, and 2 kids on bikes had just zoomed past shouting, "Hey, isn't that the guy who almost got arrested?" His expression was part deadpan, part humiliated when he spotted me. "Don't," he said before I even opened my mouth. I shrugged. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to," he muttered, jabbing at a soda can with exaggerated precision. "Your smirk said it all." I chuckled and walked beside him, keeping pace as he moved. "You forgot a wrapper." "Seriously?" "Just trying to help." "You're insufferable." "I've been told." He rolled his eyes, but his lips twitched, half a smile he didn't want me to see. That was the thing with us lately. We teased more, laughed more. The air between us had shifted, softer, warmer. Something unspoken lingered in the spaces between sentences. One night, we sat on the porch outside my room, legs stretched across the cold concrete. He had a peanut butter sandwich in one hand, his phone in the other, and a quiet look in his eyes. I nudged him. "You okay?" He hesitated, then handed me his phone. On the screen was a spreadsheet, numbers, budgets, a rough sketch of a storefront. He exhaled slowly. "I've been saving. Not just for school fees. Those are paid, by the way." I blinked. "Wait, seriously?" He nodded, a quiet pride blooming in his face. "Yeah, took me months, but I did it. Paid off my brother's tuition last week. And I've started putting money aside for something else. My own business." His eyes searched mine, cautious but hopeful. I blinked again. "Your what?" "My dream," he said softly. "I've always wanted to start my own sports brand. Not just sell equipment, but design it. Build gear for people like me who couldn't afford the good stuff growing up." I looked at him, the fire in his eyes, the curve of his lips, the way his fingers tapped anxiously against the railing as he waited for my response. "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning every syllable. Something passed between us then, a breath we both held too long, a glance that lingered too deep. I saw the way his expression shifted, softened, as if he'd been waiting to hear those words and didn't realize how badly until they left my mouth. He didn't speak for a long moment. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was electric, heavy with everything we didn't have the courage to say. I was terrified that saying it out loud might break the fragile thing we'd built. So, instead, I leaned my shoulder against his and let the quiet speak for me. I never thought the sight of someone sweeping the front of a police station could make my chest ache in a good way, but there he was, Ellie. Cap turned backward, sleeves rolled up, wiping sweat off his brow with the back of his hand like it wasn't the most unfairly attractive thing I'd ever seen. A few months ago, he would have thrown me a sarcastic jab if I so much as breathed in his direction. Now he grinned the second he saw me. "Took you long enough," he said, tossing the broom to lean against the wall. "I stopped to get your favorite," I replied, holding up a paper bag like it was a peace offering. "Cinnamon rolls." He raised a brow. Are you trying to bribe me? I smirked. Depends. Is it working? He walked up to me, close enough that I could see the grey of his eyes, and took the bag without breaking eye contact. Maybe. We sat on the low stone bench near the station steps, shoulder to shoulder, elbows brushing. It was late afternoon, one of those golden hour days that made everything look like it was pulled from a dream. He bit into the cinnamon roll, eyes fluttering shut for a second. I swear I forgot how to breathe. This was becoming a habit. Us. Moments like this, the quiet, the comfort, the lingering looks neither of us wanted to explain. I visited my parents recently while my shift at the community center, and after talking to them, they told me that the verdict on their case was there. They are sentenced to 3 to 4 years of imprisonment for the embezzlement and fraud, Ellie said, voice softer than usual. I held his hand, softly yet firmly, giving him the unspoken reassurance he needed. By the way, I've been thinking, Ellie said while looking at me. Dangerous? I teased. He rolled his eyes but nudged me with his knee. I'm serious. I looked at him. His expression was unreadable, nervous, maybe, or just holding something in. I think, he began, staring out toward the street, this is the first time I've felt like I'm allowed to want something for myself. Not just survive, not just fix things. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You are allowed. He finally turned his gaze on me. I want you. My heart stopped. Logan? He said, a little breathless. I don't know when it stopped being rivalry or whatever we told ourselves it was. I just know that every day with you feels like the best day, even when nothing happens, even when we just sit. The words hung in the air like a second heartbeat between us, and then, without thinking, without overanalyzing like I always do, I leaned in. So did he. It wasn't rushed or messy or dramatic. It was soft, like a truth we had both been afraid to say, finally settling on our lips. The kiss was warm, slow, and full of the moments we never dared to speak out loud. When we finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, and I couldn't stop the smile tugging at my lips. Ellie stood in front of his brand new sports equipment shop, the door freshly painted in a sleek navy blue, the windows gleaming under the sun. His name was printed in bold across the signage, Rivals to Runners, by Ellie Rivera. I laughed when I saw it. Subtle. We were both there on opening day. I spent hours helping him stack equipment, set up displays, even convinced a few kids from the basketball team to show up and post about it on social media. By noon, the shop was bustling, and Ellie looked like he was floating. He pulled me aside during a lull and handed me a black folder. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a simple contract, typed neatly with both our names at the top. Business partnership? I blinked at him. And life partnership, he said, cheeks tinged pink but eyes steady. You've been by my side through the worst. I want you there for the best. I didn't even think before I hugged him. So tight I knocked the air from both of us. Yes, I said, voice muffled against his shoulder. To both. My parents took longer to come around, but slowly, so slowly, they did. It started with my mum letting Ellie cook with her on Sundays. Then came my dad asking for his help fixing the backyard fence. Somewhere between shared dinners, sarcastic banter, and my mother catching Ellie humming along to her favourite 90s playlist. They stopped seeing him as the rival's son and started seeing him as family. I knew the shift was real when my dad called him kiddo during a barbecue. Ellie nearly dropped the spatula. The bell above the shop door chimed softly as Ellie locked it for the night. He flipped the sign to closed and paused for a moment, his fingers lingering on the glass. Inside, the shop felt different after hours. Quieter, more personal. He crossed the floor, weaving between racks of neatly arranged sports gear, and pulled back a curtain near the storage room. Behind it, the office, was barely big enough for a desk and a filing cabinet, but Ellie had turned the corner into something more. A small couch, second-hand but surprisingly comfortable, sat against the wall, unfolded into a makeshift bed. A pile of blankets was stacked neatly at the end. A mini fridge hummed softly beside it, next to a crate holding instant noodles, protein bars, and a chipped mug that read "World's okayest boss." He'd done the math, how many weeks it would take before he could afford a down payment on a rental. Every night here saved him money, brought him closer to something real, something stable. The door creaked. I stepped in, holding a bag of takeout. "You seriously sleeping here again?" He grinned, not even pretending to deny it. "Rent's cheap." I handed him the bag and sat on the edge of the couch while leaning against him, shoulder to shoulder. "You'll get there." "I know," he smiled, softer now. "But it helps, having someone who believes that too." I kissed his temple, then stole a bite of his noodles. "You've got me, always." The sun was dipping low, casting a golden hue over the city as I followed Ellie up the stairwell of an old but charming apartment building. He stopped in front of a weathered green door marked 38, keys jingling in his hand. "Ready?" he asked, practically bouncing on the balls of his feet. I grinned. "I've been ready since you texted. It's official, with 16 exclamation marks." He laughed, unlocking the door with a theatrical flourish and stepping aside to let me in first. It wasn't huge, a cozy living room with sunlight spilling across a second-hand rug, a little kitchenette with open shelves he'd already half filled with mismatched mugs and spices, a modest bedroom down the hall, the bed not yet fully made, and the walls still bare. But it was perfect. It was his. I turned to look at him, standing there with his hands in his pockets, trying to play it cool but failing completely. "You did it," I whispered. "Yeah," he breathed out, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "I really did." We sank into the couch, his couch, not the shop one that squeaked every time we moved. He rested his head on my shoulder, a silence settling that was soft, not heavy. "I visited my parents last week," he suddenly said, voice low. I turned to face him. "They're okay now," he continued. "I told them everything, about the shop, how it's doing well, how I'm taking care of my brother. I told them I'm not angry anymore, I'm just moving forward." My throat tightened. How did they take it? He smiled, a little bittersweet. "My mum cried, my dad didn't say much, but they listened. For once, they really listened." I took his hand in mine, fingers lacing like they belonged there. "I'm proud of you." He looked at me then, eyes brighter than I'd ever seen them. "I couldn't have done this without you, Logan. You made the hardest parts feel a little lighter. You reminded me of who I wanted to be, even when I was lost." I leaned in and kissed him, slow, soft, and full of everything we'd been through. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is our place now," he murmured. "Maybe I signed the lease, but it's always been us building this life." I smiled, tracing the edge of his jaw with my thumb. "Then let's keep building." What would you do if your biggest rival showed up in your room in the middle of the night? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.